Good morning, everyone. As we are about to start this event by 12 noon, may we remind everyone to rename yourself, indicating your name, agency, and country so that we can recognize those who are joining internationally. And as you can see, we are now live streamed via DOH YouTube, so keep your microphones on mute. Thank you.
Good afternoon to everyone. Good afternoon to everyone. Welcome to the second day of the International Thyroid Awareness Week. Today being World Thyroid Day itself. Every May 25 is World Thyroid Day. And so this is now the official start of the International Thyroid Awareness Week. But since yesterday was a Monday, we had to start our activities on a Monday. So this celebration of the International Thyroid Awareness Week is brought to you by the Department of Health of the Republic of the Philippines in partnership with the Iodine Global Network, World Health Organization, and the different societies of the Philippine Thyroid Technical Working Group. I am Dr. Teofilo San Luis Jr., the National Coordinator for the Philippines of the Iodine Global Network. And I will be your host for the second day. And we would like to acknowledge first the presence of our respectable speakers and participants from different centers for health development, primary care facilities, and everyone who is watching our live streaming via Facebook. So today's session, on day 2 of this Thyroid Awareness Week, will dwell on the scourge that a woman and her child will bear when iodine deficiency comes into the picture during her pregnancy and lactation, and even well after the child is born and lives into its 1,000 days of life. Iodine deficiency disorders, or IDD, continues to affect large segment of the world's population, and not only of the developing world, but also of the more developed economies. The Iodine Global Network has a scorecard for every country insofar as IDD situation is concerned. In the Philippines, the level of iodine nutrition among the different sectors of the population is made known through surveys every 5 years by the Food and Nutrition Research Institute. And of particular interest for us in this celebration of the ETAO are the results of iodine levels among pregnant and lactating women and of the women of reproductive age. The most effective tool for iodine delivery for human consumption is adequately iodized salt through its National Salt Iodization Program. The presentation of the 3 speakers lined up today will highlight all these perspectives and concerns. And it's very opportune that today's session will also be shared with colleagues from different countries in the Asia-Pacific region, where IDD remains a problem. People think of IDD primarily in terms of goiter, the enlargement of the thyroid gland, and seen only among women up there in the hinterlands. But at the end of this session, the audience will have to start to think beyond goiter, as the dynamics of iodine deficiency have impacts beyond the woman and with an enlarged neck and more into the general health and productivity of her child. And before we proceed to this program proper, we would like to present the webinar guidelines to ensure that this virtual gathering will be enjoyable and productive. So first, kindly indicate your agency and organization after your name so that we can recognize you accordingly. Keep your microphone on mute while you are engaged. Turn off your video during lecture discussion to save bandwidth and prevent distraction. Reserve questions until the Q&A portion. You may put your questions on the chat box and address them to the specific speakers. And stay present throughout the session. Now that the webinar guidelines have been presented, we are now ready to listen to our speakers. To officially commence our day 2, we would like to warmly welcome our first speaker from the Iodine Global Network. He is the chair of the IGN. He received his MD from the Vanderbilt University School of Medicine and did his postgraduate medical training at the University of California in San Francisco. And he is currently the professor of human nutrition at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich, Switzerland. And as an adjunct professor in endocrinology and diabetes at the University of Zurich Hospital in Switzerland. He is the chair of the Iodine Global Network, which used to be called the International Council for Control of Iodine Deficiency Disorder, ICC-IDD. That used to be the name of IGN. So let us warmly welcome the chair of the Iodine Global Network to present to us the scourge of iodine deficiency on the woman and her child. And speaking to us on a pre-recorded presentation is Dr. Michael B. Zimmerman. Okay, take it away.
Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Zimmerman. I'm a professor of nutrition and medicine from Zurich, Switzerland. And it's a great pleasure to be speaking at the ITAW. I'm going to be talking today about the effects of iodine deficiency on maternal and child health. I have no conflicts of interest to disclose. Now, Jim Grant, who was the UNICEF executive director for many years, was a champion for children, especially when it came to nutrition. And he said famously that enough iodine is every child's right. The content of my presentation will include iodine deficiency. Why is it so important? Then what is the current global situation? Do we need iodized salt for pregnant and lactating women, or do we need supplements as well? Should the food industry use iodized salt? And finally, salt or sodium reduction. Is this a challenge to iodized salt programs? Now, as you all know, goiter is the most visible effect of iodine deficiency, but the most important effect is mental retardation. Goiter, of course, is a way of detecting iodine deficiency in populations. In this beautiful picture from this woman from the DRC in Africa, you can see that goiter is present. And this, of course, is an indication that there's iodine deficiency population. But what we're really worried about is not so much goiter, which is really a cosmetic problem, but more the effect of iodine deficiency, the underlying iodine deficiency on brain development and mental retardation. Now, it's well known that iodine deficiency during pregnancy damages the fetal brain. You can see here some histomicrographs of iodine sufficient versus iodine deficient brain tissue from famous experiments done by Basil Hetzel in animals back in the early 1960s. But you can see that there's decreased proliferation and myelinization and overall decreased and reduced brain architecture caused by iodine deficiency. And what this means is if it's severe during pregnancy, it yields the condition called cretinism, which is severe iodine deficiency in utero, causing severe mental impairment and impairments in growth. On the left, you see here a classic neurological cretinism, cretin, and here on the right, you see myxodematous cretin. So this, of course, is the tip of the iceberg, very severe iodine deficiency during pregnancy, causing severe mental retardation. Now, maybe as important is that not only does severe maternal iodine deficiency lower IQ in obviously in cretins, but it also does in children who are born non-cretinous and look fairly normal when born, but they have a lower developmental quotient, as shown by these two classic studies, one from Central Africa and one from two-year-old children in China, showing that when compared to offspring from mothers who were given iodine during pregnancy, those who were not supplemented, you can see that the development quotient is about, let's say, 10 to 15 points down. So not only does severe iodine deficiency in utero cause cretinism, it also reduces the developmental quotient in areas of severe deficiency. Now, Peter Taylor did this meta-analysis where he looked at the impact of iodine supplementation in mild to moderate iodine deficiency on school children. And there are only two studies. One was done in New Zealand and one was done in Eastern Europe. But both of them showed that iodine deficiency and iodine supplementation had a significant effect on overall cognitive function in school children. And these were children with only mild to moderate iodine deficiency. So not only does iodine treatment during pregnancy to correct iodine deficiency improve IQ and development, but also iodine supplementation of only mild to moderate iodine deficiency in school-age children also has benefits on cognition. Now, WHO has very nicely summarized the efficacy and safety of salt iodization to prevent iodine deficiency disorders in this systematic review led by Dr. Nancy Alberto. And looking at 89 studies around the world, they found a 82% decrease in goiter, an 87% decrease in cretinism, and a 73% decrease in low IQ, that is IQ less than 70 points. So really massive benefits in terms of reducing goiter and reducing cretinism and improving IQ when salt iodization is introduced into populations. Now, iodine deficiency is not only important in mothers and their children, but also in older adults. This famous figure from Denmark shows you the incidence rates of hyperthyroidism in men and women in two areas of Denmark, one that was mildly iodine deficient, Copenhagen, and one that was moderately iodine deficient in Aalborg in northern Denmark. And you can see that with age, there's an increasing risk of hyperthyroidism. And you can see that that risk is much higher in the women in the area of moderate iodine deficiency compared to women in areas of mild iodine deficiency. So this study suggests that especially in older women in areas of even mild iodine deficiency, there's an increased rate of hyperthyroidism. This occurs because in mild to moderate ID, there's an increase in thyroid activity that can compensate for low iodine intakes and maintain euthyroidism in most people, but this comes at a price because it involves chronic thyroid stimulation, which increases toxic nodules and hyperthyroidism. Iodine deficiency is important throughout the life cycle. And in this discussion today, I'm talking mainly about mothers and children, but just remember, it's also an important determinant of thyroid disorders in the adult population. Now, we've made remarkable progress against iodine deficiency around the world through the introduction of iodized salt. And I'd like to just show you a series of maps which shows this progress. I mean, it's been described by WHO as one of the most impressive public health triumphs of the century. In 1993, based on goiter rates in mainly children, you can see that there were 113 countries with elevated goiter rates suggesting that they were iodine deficient. You can see that many countries had severe deficiency. Usually that meant that more than 40% of children had goiter. By 2003, with the introduction of iodized salt throughout Latin America, much of sub-Saharan Africa and India and China, only 54 countries remained iodine deficient. By this time, we were monitoring iodine status through urinary iodine concentrations rather than goiter rates. By 2007, you can see a further decrease, only 47 countries deficient. By 2012, further progress, only 30 countries now are iodine deficient. But you can also see that iodine excess is appearing in some countries. And this is, of course, something we have to be very careful of when we introduce iodized salt into populations, that we get it right. We don't give too much. And in some countries, because of high intakes of salt and high concentrations of iodine in salt, we were providing too much iodine to populations. And you can see that there were some countries with excess. By 2021, the current situation now, you can see that only 19 countries remain iodine deficient around the world. We have data on most countries, which is remarkable because the quality of the data is quite high from these surveys. Many of them are national or large subnational data sets. So we still have problems in several countries in Africa, Russia, Ukraine. Some European countries remain iodine deficient, but most countries around the world remain only mild iodine deficient in 2021. You can see here in this graphic that the number of iodine deficient countries has fallen from 1990, when about 113 countries at the national level were deficient, down to only 19 in 2021. So really remarkable, remarkable progress against iodine deficiency around the world. Now, we usually define progress against iodine deficiency by looking at urinary iodine concentrations in children. But what about pregnant and lactating women? Of course, this is a different population, a population at increased risk of iodine deficiency. These are two beautiful paintings from the Renaissance period in Italy, showing that even back then, in many regions of Europe, many pregnant and lactating women would develop goiter because they had borderline or low iodine intakes. Now, this is the 2017 map of iodine status in pregnant women around the world. And you can see this looks very different from the map showing progress against iodine deficiency in school-age children. Many pregnant women around the world remain mildly iodine deficient, including populations in countries like the United States, in France, the UK, Switzerland, where I live, India, the Philippines, Australia. So there remains mild iodine deficiency in many, many parts of the world when we look specifically at pregnant women. And for example, in Europe, you can see that most European countries, if you look at pregnant women and measure UICs, the median UIC will be less than 150 micrograms per liter, suggesting mild to moderate iodine deficiency. Now, the reason that so many pregnant women have low iodine intakes is because their iodine requirement is so much higher than in non-pregnancy. So here you see recommendations for daily iodine intake from the US Institute of Medicine and from the World Health Organization, but you can see that compared to non-pregnant women, there's an increase in iodine requirement from 150 to 220 up to 290 micrograms per day in lactating women. So very sharp increase in iodine requirements to maintain maternal and fetal euthyroidism means that many pregnant women are unable to meet this requirement and are mildly iodine deficient. Now, is it then important to provide iodine supplements to these mild to moderately deficient pregnant women? That's still a matter of debate. It's not certain whether maternal iodine supplements are beneficial. Several expert thyroid organizations like the American and European Thyroid Associations do recommend iodine supplements be given to pregnant women in areas of mild deficiency. They state that there's not much data available, but until more data becomes available, it's prudent to supplement at about 150 micrograms per day. In contrast, the World Health Organization does not recommend supplements in areas of mild iodine deficiency in pregnancy. They estimate that pregnant women should be able to cover their needs for iodine from stores in the thyroid and from increased plasma clearance of circulating iodine, even if the median urinary iodine concentration is slightly low at about 100 to 150. So there's a current debate about whether supplements are needed in mildly deficient pregnant women. Now, there's some data from, we believe that the effects of mild iodine deficiency in pregnancy would be mediated through effects on maternal thyroid function, right? We believe that the effects on brain development in an iodine deficient pregnancy are due to insufficient thyroid hormone in the brain of the developing fetus. Several studies, not looking at iodine status, but looking at whether whether treatment of mild maternal hypothyroidism has benefits in terms of IQ. This one's the famous CAT study published in 2012. This was done in Italy and in the UK. And what they did was they treated maternal subclinical hypothyroidism or maternal hypothyroxanemia, normal TSH and a low free T4 with 150 micrograms per day of thyroxine. There were 404 controls and 390 treated women. They found when they measured child IQ at 3 years via the Wechsler scales that there was no difference between the two groups. So treatment of mild hypothyroidism in pregnancy in this study had no benefit. Similarly, in this study, which was done in the US by Brian Casey and the Human Development Maternal Fetal Medicine Units Network, they began treatment for subclinical hypothyroidism or hypothyroxanemia during pregnancy, beginning at between 8 and 20 weeks of gestation. And in this study, similarly to the cat study, this did not result in significantly better cognitive outcomes in children measured a little later at 5 years of age, compared to those that did not receive treatment for hypothyroidism during pregnancy. So it looks like from these two big studies that treatment of very mild hypothyroidism or hypothyroxanemia in pregnancy is not beneficial. And that's informative because that's what we think we're doing with iodine supplements, right? Is preventing mild hypothyroidism during pregnancy. Now, there's been a lot of studies looking at observational studies looking at the effects of inadequate iodine status in pregnant women on cognitive outcomes. And this is one of the best studies. This was the ALSPAC, or Avon Longitudinal Study of Parents and Children study, where they looked at pregnant women in the UK. Women were in their first trimester. There were 1,000 of them in this analysis. And those with a spot urinary iodine concentration that was greater than 150 micrograms per gram creatinine, and when their children were measured at 8 to 9 years, there were 2.2 point higher mean IQ scores in those children when the UIC compared to children from mothers who had a UIC less than 150 micrograms per gram creatinine. So slightly higher IQ scores in the women who had higher iodine intakes in the first trimester. And if you compared the women who had a spot UIC greater than 150 to those who had a spot UIC less than 50, then there was a 6-point difference in IQ comparing children at 8 to 9 years. And this was adjusted for many potential compounding variables. Unfortunately, thyroid functions were not available for this study. Now, other non-randomized and observational studies have looked at the effects of maternal iodine status on infant outcomes, and really the results are fairly discrepant. Some studies show benefit, some studies show no benefit. A couple of studies even show potential harm in terms of supplementation. It's difficult to interpret. The only study which has looked in terms of a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled design on whether iodine supplementation in pregnancy in mild iodine deficiency can affect child development is this study, which I did together with colleagues from Thailand, India, and the Netherlands. And in this study, studying women in southern India and in Thailand, we compared daily oral administration of 200 micrograms of iodine versus placebo in mildly iodine deficient pregnant women. And there were 832 women who entered the study. We looked at maternal thyroid functions, at birth outcomes, at newborn and infant development, and the primary outcome was development at 5 to 6 years of age. We also measured hearing. This is really the first RCT and the only one to date to assess the effect of maternal iodine supplementation on child development in mild iodine deficiency. Here you can see some of the data from that study. You can see the baseline maternal urinary iodine concentrations on the left. You can see that the women in Thailand were more iodine deficient than the women in India. In the pooled data on the right, you can see the increase in the median urinary iodine concentration from first through third trimester, with a nice difference between the iodine treated versus placebo women. However, you can see in the placebo women that their median urinary iodine concentration is right around 150 micrograms per liter, as shown by the lower border of the shaded gray box, suggesting that they were just achieving iodine sufficiency as well. So that may have made detect differences a bit more difficult. Anyway, there was a substantial increase in iodine intake associated with supplementation. And when we measured infant development first at 1 year and 2 years using the Bailey scales, we found no differences between the groups in terms of overall infant development at 1 or 2 years of age. This was measured in 430 babies. And finally, when we measured developmental outcomes at 5.4 years of age and 313 of the babies, we found no differences on the Wechsler preschool and primary scale of intelligence. We also looked at the global executive composite score from the behavioral rating inventory of executive function. and also found no difference. So it looked like in this study that treatment of mild iodine deficiency with iodine was not beneficial in terms of affecting child outcomes. We concluded that supplementation of 200 micrograms per day in mildly iodine deficient pregnant women is safe, which is important. There was no adverse effect on thyroid disorders or TPO antibodies. This level of supplementation was effective in increasing maternal iodine intakes into the sufficient range. It had a very modest beneficial effect on maternal thyroid function. We saw slightly lower TSH and lower thyroid globulin in the treated women, but again, there was no effect on infant or child neurodevelopment. So this suggests it's probably a good message in that in pregnant women with mildly deficient iodine intakes, it looks like the maternal thyroid is able to adapt by increasing clearance of plasma iodide and also drawing from thyroidal iodine stores that have been built up before pregnancy. And this enables a woman to meet the increased requirements of pregnancy and ensure euthyroidism and normal development in children. Now, it would be great to have more data on this issue. It would be very nice to have more randomized controlled trials looking at iodine supplementation in mild to moderately deficient pregnant women. But this is what we have in terms of available data. So WHO recommends, in terms of universal salt iodization and iodine supplements for women, I think that these recommendations are supported by that randomized controlled trial, that universal salt iodization remains the key strategy to eliminate iodine deficiency disorders, and where USI has been effective for at least 2 years with household salt adequately iodized and consumed by the majority of the population, and if the median UIC is at least 100 micrograms per liter in children, suggesting that overall population iodine status is sufficient, then the iodine needs of pregnant and lactating women should be covered by the iodized salt program. And dietary iodine, together with increased thyroidal iodine clearance and thyroid iodine stores, should be sufficient for thyroid hormone synthesis. But again, we need more data on this issue. What about supplementing lactating women and their infants? We saw in the requirements table that the requirement for iodine is actually at its highest during lactation, because the breastfeeding mother must be able to transfer over enough iodine in breast milk to the baby to cover the baby's need for iodine, and also needs to meet her iodine requirements for thyroid hormone synthesis. In this study, which we did in Morocco, we compared direct iodine supplementation of infants versus supplementation of the breastfeeding mothers. This was a double-blind, randomized, placebo-controlled trial in 482 mother-infant pairs. The infants were enrolled into the study when they were a mean age of only 2 weeks old, so very early. The procedures were that in the indirect infant supplementation group, we gave the mother oral iodized oil, which is a depot form of iodine where you provide a large amount of iodine, which is then deposited into adipose tissue and gradually released. And this can provide enough iodine for individuals for up to 1 year after a single dose. So we gave the mother 400 milligrams of oral iodine as iodized oil, and the infant got a placebo. So that's the indirect supplementation group where the iodine for the infant is coming through breast milk. And then there was the direct infant supplementation group where the mother received placebo and the infant received directly while breastfeeding 100 milligrams of oral iodine as half a capsule of iodized oil. So in this study here, you can see first the urinary iodine concentrations in the mothers. The mothers in the study were moderately iodine deficient with a median of around 30 to 40 microgram per liter. And you can see that, not surprisingly, there's no change in the median urinary iodine concentration in the mothers where the iodine was being given directly to their babies. But in the mothers who received the iodine supplementation, you can see this led to a significant increase in urinary iodine concentration in the women themselves. Then we looked at breast milk iodine concentrations, which of course is the pathway by which iodine supplements given to breastfeeding women would reach their infants. And you can see that breast milk iodine concentration was significantly higher in the women who received the iodine supplements compared to the mother-child pairs where the infant was directly supplemented. So the iodine supplementation in lactating women was effective in improving not only urinary iodine concentrations in the mothers, but also breast milk iodine concentrations. You can see this effect lasts for about 9 months after a single dose of iodized oil. Now, if you look at the urinary iodine concentrations in the infants, you can see that actually the population that received the iodine through breast milk, the indirect route, actually did better than the group that received it directly. So the babies who were getting iodine through the breast milk from their mother actually had higher urinary iodine concentrations than the group that was receiving the iodized oil directly, which was a bit of a surprise. And when we looked at hypothyroidism in the infants, which of course is the main outcome we were worried about, you can see that, first of all, at baseline, at less than 2 months of age, about 40 to 43% of babies either had hypothyroxanemia or mild hypothyroidism. So in this area of moderate iodine deficiency, you can see that infants appear to be very sensitive to low iodine intakes, with a substantial number of them being hypothyroid. You can see after indirect and direct supplementation with iodine, there's a dramatic decrease in the prevalence of hypothyroidism. But you can see actually that in the babies who received the iodine through breast milk, the red indirect infant supplementation, they actually did better in terms of this completely eliminated hypothyroxanemia or hypothyroidism from the babies. So this study suggested that if you want to provide iodine supplements to breastfeeding babies, it's best to give it to the lactating mother and have her deliver the iodine through breast milk to the baby. So if you need to give iodized oil in areas of moderate to severe deficiency to lactating women, you should give it directly to them and not to the babies. And adequate iodine will be passed through the breast milk to the infant to maintain infant euthyroidism. Okay, one important theme in iodine nutrition nowadays is that in industrialized countries, and actually in many middle-income countries, more and more of our salt intakes are coming from processed foods. So when we try to deliver iodine to populations through iodized salt, it's important to not only iodize table salt, but also processed foods need to contain iodized salt. If you look at this simple graph here, this is iodine intakes in the UK, salt intakes in the UK, and you can see that processed and restaurant foods supply 77% of salt intake, and eating at the home, in terms of discretionary iodized salt use, salt only provides about 11% of intakes. So if 90% of the intakes in a population are coming, salt intakes in a population are coming from processed foods and restaurant foods, it's critical that those sources be using iodized salt. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to provide enough iodine to populations if we're only iodizing 10% of the salt that people are getting. So it's really important now, and the focus is shifting away from iodizing only table salt to iodizing all processed foods. This is critical in terms of achieving adequate intakes in populations. Now, so it's important in low and high income countries that processed foods contain iodized salt. You can see on the left data from the Netherlands showing that iodization of salt used in bread making provides about 50% of total iodine intake in school-age children and adults. So in the Netherlands, ensuring that bread salt iodization occurs enables people to have adequate iodine intakes. Also in West Africa, this is important. In Ghana, we did a study that showed that 2/3 of iodine intake in northern Ghana was coming from bouillon cubes. Now, bouillon cubes are seasoning agents used in West Africa and throughout the world. And in this region, it appeared that bullion cubes, which contain a lot of salt, were being made using iodized salt, and this was providing iodine to the population. Among these school-age children that we looked at, the median UIC and the estimated iodine intake were sufficient, with the median UIC around 240 micrograms per liter and the estimated iodine intake around 130 micrograms per day. So they had adequate iodine status. And when we looked at the median iodine content of bullion cubes, it was about 31 micrograms of iodine per gram. So we estimated that a significant fraction of the iodine intake in this population was coming from bullion cubes containing iodized salt. And this is a current emphasis of iodine programs throughout Africa to ensure that bullion cubes are being made with iodized salt. The WHO has had 2 consultations looking at the compatibility of salt reduction and iodine fortification strategies in public health. When salt reduction strategies first came strongly into public health, there was some worry that perhaps these would jeopardize the success that we've had in terms of providing providing iodine through salt. And WHO has emphasized that these programs actually, they do not jeopardize each other. They are actually compatible and potentially synergistic. From the first consultation in Luxembourg in 2007, WHO said at the country level, close collaboration between salt iodization and salt reduction programs is urgently required so that their aims are congruent. And a second consultation in Sydney in 2013 concluded the meeting demonstrated the potential to synergize both iodized salt programs and salt reduction programs to ensure optimal implementation by promoting their commonalities. So salt reduction efforts need to go forward to reduce hypertension in populations, but at the same time, it's important that all salt that's used is iodized. We can very easily titrate up the concentration of iodine in salt as population salt intakes fall in order to ensure adequate iodine intakes. So my conclusions from my presentation today is that essentially there's been remarkable progress in the control of iodine deficiency over the past 2 decades. The question is, can we sustain these achievements? At least the experience from Latin America suggests that we can. This was an article we published in Lancet Diabetes and Endocrinology. The two maps show you historical data on endemic goiter in Latin America, and the current situation showing that most countries are now completely iodine sufficient. So this is sustained elimination of IDD from the Americas. So this suggests that these iodized salt programs can be sustained, and over the long term, they can improve iodine intakes in populations. Also, a conclusion from my talk today is that regular monitoring is critical, right, to avoid both iodine deficiency and iodine excess. Both deficiency and excess can have detrimental effects on thyroid function, so it's important that we avoid both by regular monitoring of urinary iodine concentrations in vulnerable populations, and by monitoring the salt industry to be sure that they're producing high quality iodized salt. Now it looks like, based on the available data, that high coverage with adequately iodized salt can likely meet the needs of pregnant and lactating women and their infants. But we probably need more data on whether iodine supplements are needed or not in mildly deficient pregnant women. We know that severe iodine deficiency in pregnancy causes a lot of detrimental effects and can reduce IQ in the offspring. We don't know whether mild iodine deficiency also has this detrimental effect. Now, in many countries, as I mentioned, iodizing table salt is not enough. Processed foods must contain iodized salt if we're going to use salt as a vehicle to provide iodine to the population. And finally, I'd like to say that salt intake reduction efforts are not a threat to iodized salt programs, it's actually an opportunity. So with that, I'd like to conclude my presentation And thank you again for the chance to speak at this important series of meetings.
Thank you very much, Professor Michael Zimmerman. Please reserve questions in the chat box, and we shall try to endeavor to answer them with Professor Zimmerman. Unfortunately, he is the time difference between the Philippines and Switzerland is 6 hours, so it is very early in Switzerland right now, and that is why he had a pre-recorded presentation. We'll move on into the second presentation, and we are very fortunate to have with us another accomplished speaker. She is the director of the Department of Science and Technology, Food and Nutrition Research Institute, and she has conducted numerous community trials that contributed significantly to the improvement in nutritional status of Filipinos. And so without much further ado, we'd like to welcome FNRI Director, Dr. Imelda Angeles Agdepa, to discuss with us the National Nutrition Survey results on pregnant and lactating mothers. So, Dr. Agdepa.
So good afternoon to all guests and participants in this forum. My presentation is on the iodine status of pregnant and lactating mothers and the implementation of salt iodization as a result of the 2018 National Nutrition Survey. So the Food and Nutrition Research Institute, Department of Science and Technology, is the premier agency of the government in food and nutrition research and development, as well as science and technology services. We are mandated to actually define the nutritional status of the Filipino population, develop recommendations for the improvement of the nutritional status, as well as diffuse knowledge and technologies in food and nutrition, and provide science and technology services to relevant stakeholders. You can see here that the mandate is actually the 3Ds. I usually call this as 3Ds.
So what is a survey design of the ENNS, or what we call the Expanded National Nutrition Survey? We call this as a rolling survey for 3 years, wherein for the first year that started actually last 2018, we covered 40 provinces and another 40 provinces in 2019. In 2020, supposed to be,
we have to cover 37 provinces to actually complete the coverage for the 117 highly urbanized 117 provinces and highly urbanized cities. And because of the lockdown, we pulled out our researchers. So take note that
the 37 provinces remained uncovered until this time. So the target households per domain is an average of about 1,500 households.
So the 40 provinces and highly urbanized cities covered in the 2018 are in the graph or in the map.
And now, with regards to the sample size, you can see very well here that from in 1978, we only covered 2,800 households. But in 2018, we covered 45,957 households. So it really had ballooned a lot. And for the for individuals, we covered 17,667 individuals in 1978. But for 2018, we covered 159,926 individuals.
So for that survey, we collected 9 components, and one of which is the anthropometric, another is the biochemical, next is the clinical component, wherein we took blood pressure and other lifestyle behaviors, and for another component is a dietary component, and we also have socioeconomic survey, food security, and maternal and infant young child feeding practices. Now, centering on or focusing on the urinary iodine concentration determination, we got actually urine samples, about 50 ml midstream casual urine samples, which were actually collected in clean labeled polystyrene bottles, and urine samples were packed in properly labeled plastic bags. They were stored inside an ice chest with wet ice, while in the field and in transit to FNRI, wherein we put them in a freezer below 20 degrees. For the sample assay, we actually followed the urinary iodine method using the spectrophometer. We actually followed a quality assurance mechanism or regimen wherein we have a standard reference material and ensuring that the quality of urinary iodine procedures are actually followed. We also did a precision in-house pooled urine samples analyzing its acidae. And we maintained actually a urinary iodine level within the plus and minus 3 SD of the analyzed value. If this is exceeding the plus and minus 3 SD, then a repeat measurement is undertaken. For the epidemiological criteria for assessment of iodine nutrition, in the population based on median or range urinary iodine concentration is school age, we use this kind of the threshold or concentration. So for less than 20, we have it, we call this or we classify this as insufficient, having severe iron deficiency, and then 20 to 49 also insufficient with moderate iodine deficiency. And if the urinary iodine concentration is about 50 to 99, still considered insufficient. However, this is mild iodine deficiency. We only have one adequate or optimal iodine status if we have a UIC of 100 to 199. About 200 to 299 is that it's more than adequate, and the risk of induced hyperthyroidism is susceptible in that group. More than or equal to 300 is already excessive, and there might be risk of adverse health consequences. So for the epidemiological criteria for assessing nutrition, iodine concentration of pregnant women, we followed these. No? So it's higher. So let me now move on with the results of the study or the results of our National Nutrition Survey. So among women of reproductive age, 15 to 49 years old. So the median and percent distribution of urinary iodine concentration by physiologic state and age group, we have for non-pregnant, non-lactating, with a sample size of about 12,789, we had a median of about 170. However, those who have less than 20 microgram, no, we have a percentage of about 3.8%, and for those having 20 to 49, 7.5, and you can see down the line. Now, for lactating women, I'll just pinpoint to you that they almost have about 7.2 and 14.4% and 27.4% having actually insufficient UIC or urinary iodine concentration, microgram per liter. For pregnant women, you have around 5.5 for less than 20 and 14.7 for 20 to 49 and 40.2 for 50 to 149. Now, in summary, the median urinary iodine concentration and percent UI level of less than 50 microgram per liter among women of reproductive age 15 to 49 years old. For non-pregnant, non-lactating, they have a median of about 170. However, they have about 11.3% who are having less than 50. For pregnant women, about 121 microgram per liter for their UI level. However, we still can find about 20.2% who are having less than 50 microgram per liter. And for lactating women, they have a median of 103 microgram per liter, but we still have 21.2% having less than 50 microgram per liter. So for the median UIC and percent UI level of less than 50 microgram per liter among women of reproductive age 15 to 49 years old by place of residence, you can see here that pregnant non-lactating women in rural and urban areas indicate optimal iodine nutrition. Among pregnant women, iodine deficiency exists in both rural and urban areas, while among lactating mothers, iodine deficiency exists in rural areas. For the median UIC and percent UI level of less than 50 microgram per liter among women of reproductive age by wealth quintile, for non-pregnant, non-lactating women, the proportion with UI level of less than 50 microgram was lower among the middle to richest quintile. However, fluctuating values of iodine status were observed for pregnant women and lactating mothers across the wealth quintile. Now, the areas covered in the 20 NNS with iodine deficiency or with pockets of iodine deficiency, you can see here in Abra, another in Zamboanga del Norte, and in Sultan Kudarat, as well as in Davao Occidental. So these are those having median UIC and percent UI level of less than 50 microgram per liter among non-pregnant, non-lactating women.
So for areas with pockets of iodine deficiency more than or equal to 100 microgram per liter, but with 20%, more than 20% with UI level of less than 50 microgram per liter, there are still areas covered in 2018 with pockets of iodine deficiency. So the median UIC and percent UI level of less than 50 microgram per liter among lactating women is shown in this map. So you can see that we have Olongapo City, and then we have City of Manila and Makati City, Isabela City, Maguindanao, Sultan Kudarat, Camiguin, Eastern Samar, we have Laguna and Isabela. For areas with iodine deficiency less than 100 microgram per liter and more than 20% with GI level of less than 50 microgram per liter, these are the areas covered in 2018 with median UIC and percent UI level of less than 50 microgram per liter among lactating women. So you can see also in this graph the different areas covered in 2019 with this with less than 50 microgram per liter.
So let me now move on with food fortification as a strategy to address iodine deficiency, focusing actually on salt iodization. So Republic Act number 8172 was actually approved last 1995, July, no? This is promoting salt iodization nationwide and for related purposes. It is known an Act for Salt Iodization nationwide. So the purpose of the law is to contribute to the elimination of micronutrient malnutrition in the country, particularly iodine deficiency disorders, through the cost-effective preventive measure of salt iodization. It requires all producers, manufacturers of food-grade salt to iodize the salt that they produce, manufacture, import, trade, or distribute. And it requires the DOH to undertake the program, and for each BFAD, or now is the FDA, to set and enforce standards for food-grade iodized salt. So the trends in the purpose of households who were aware and claimed users of iodized salt in the Philippines from 1998 to 2018, there was actually a steady increase in the proportion of households using iodized salt from 1998 to 2018. However, the trends in RTK and WYD iodine checker test results from 1998 to 2018. Take note that we do not have RTK tests in 2018. However, based on WYD results, proportion of households using adequately iodized salt was slowly increasing. And the distribution of households by WYD test results for salt by place of residence, you can see that inadequately iodized salt is higher or almost similar both in urban and rural areas, wherein the less than 5 ppm is 44.5 in the rural areas and 41% in the urban area. Similarly, they also have similar for the levels from 5 to 14.99, and they only have a slight deviation when there is for adequately iodized salt, wherein there is about 34.6 in the rural area, which is lower than 40.5 in the urban area, with those households having more than or equal to 15 ppm. So by wet quintile, of course, you can see that for those that are inadequately iodized, they have similar for similar percentages for those who are actually less than 5 the iodization level is less than 5 ppm, and for 5 to 14.5 14.9 ppm, highest prevalence or highest percentage is seen in the poorest and the poor area. And for the rich, for the more than 15 that is adequately iodized salt, more than or equal to 15 ppm, you can see this in the rich to richest wealth quintile.
The progress in the Philippines towards the elimination of iodine deficiency from 1998 to 2018 revealed that the proportion, the indicator for this is actually the proportion of households using adequately iodized salt. That's actually measured by WYD in percent. So our goal is to have actually more than 90%. However, in 2008, we only have 25.2% of these households are actually using adequately iodized salt. And in 2013, 26.2%. 2018 is 37.2%. So we are also actually having progress in this, because through the years from 2008 to 2018, we are increasing in the percentage of households using adequately iodized salt.
And the summary of findings, so median UIC indicate optimum iodine status among non-pregnant and non-lactating women. Iodine deficiency still exists among lactating mothers and pregnant women, and lower percentage of adequately iodized salt at the household level. We have to strengthen the implementation of ASIN law from the national to the local level. That's actually a very important call for action. And we must strengthen the promotion and advocacy using simple and easy to understand messages on the use of iodized salt and consumption of iodine-rich foods. Now, however, we have to keep in mind that we must build strong partnerships with food industries to be more responsive and co-create actions for change. We need to send off simple messages to parents, caregivers for home-based actions. So gone are the days that we are so sophisticated in terms of relaying messages or in terms of conducting educational campaigns. So maintain standards on the level of fortification of salt. And of course, we need data to be collected and collated and used to build the dialogues, just what we are having right now, and build partnerships, actions, and accountability needed to actually end our problem on iodine deficiency disorder. With this, for further queries or questions, you can contact our details below. So maraming salamat po and thank you for your participation.
Okay, thank you very much. Please take note of the email address of Dr. Agdepa for some questions that you might want to propound to her, because in the interest of time, and she could not also be with us for the open forum. So we move on to the third, but certainly not the least of the speakers, and who will discuss the National Nutrition Survey and the National Salt Iodization Program. And she has been a facilitator and trainer for various health programs, particularly in the maternal and child health and nutrition. And she was appointed as the executive director of the National Nutrition Council, the Department of Health. And she is also the focal point for the scaling up nutrition of the Philippine government. And let us welcome the Executive Director of the National Nutrition Council, who will speak to us on the National Salt Iodization Program. Has it made a difference in the health outcomes of women and children? Dr. Azucena Dayang-Tirang. Okay.
Thank you very much. A pleasant day to everyone. Thank you for inviting me to be a speaker in this webinar. I am pleased to share with you this presentation on the National Salt Iodization Program. Has it made a difference in the health outcomes of women and children? Now, we will start with a short background on the ASIN law and the National Salt Iodization Program, or NSIP, followed by the program updates at the national and regional levels. Towards the end, we will see if the salt iodization program has indeed made the difference in the health outcomes of women and children by looking at the latest iodine status of the country based on the results of the 2018 Expanded National Nutrition Survey. Now, Republic Act 8172, or the Act for Salt Iodization nationwide, actually was touched earlier by Director Agdepa, which is the ASIN law, is the enabling law for the mandatory salt iodization. It aims to contribute to eliminate iodine deficiency disorders through the cost-effective measure of salt iodization. RA 8172 requires all salt for human and animal consumption to be iodized, including processed food that use salt. The National Iodization Program, or the NSIP, is a product of Republic Act 8172. And the management of the National Salt Iodization Program was made effective and efficient through the development of a strategic plan. Now, the plan has a 4-year implementation frame, which actually started from 2018 and will end in 2022. The strategic plan aims to bring the median urinary iodine concentration, or the UIC levels, of the population to the recommended level and aspires to increase the percentage of households using adequately iodized salt to more than 90%. All the targets mentioned above are aimed at achieving the ultimate goal of universal salt iodization, or USI. Now, various actions were pursued and are still being pursued to achieve the outcomes set by the strategic plan. These actions are clustered into three components, such as technical assistance, regulation and monitoring, and promotion and advocacy. Now, the technical working group on NSIP was organized by the National Nutrition Council Secretariat mainly to address the concerns of the salt industry and to manage and coordinate salt ionization program. This TWG is composed of various government agencies, non-government organizations, international organizations, and partners from the salt industry that all work together in the development, implementation, and monitoring of the activities in the strategic plan. The provision of technical assistance was done in the past years, even before 2018, and is still being done as requested by salt manufacturers and LGUs. The DOST, ITDI, or the Industrial Technology Development Institute, continues to provide trainings on salt ionization technology, quality assurance, quality control, calibration, operation, and maintenance of salt iodizing machine, as well as iodine checker. Second, the guidelines on the local level salt ionization program monitoring and checklist were developed and will be disseminated to provide the standard procedure and tools for monitoring the implementation of the NSIP from the provincial level down to the city or municipal level, including and involving salt plants, public and private markets, and other salt providers and household consumers. The guidelines will aid in monitoring the progress and assessing the overall implementation of RA 8172 at the local level using a combination of methods such as the use of site visits, use of checklist-guided interviews, records review, report submission, and meetings of the interagency BAC. Now, various IEC materials on RA 8172 or iodine deficiency and benefits from using adequately iodized salt were developed and disseminated. Actually, the next slide will give us the IEC materials or show us the IEC materials developed and being disseminated. The counterpart of the TWG and SIP at the national level or at the regional level is called the Bantay Asin Task Force or BATF. The BATFs address immediate bottlenecks that prevent assured supply of adequately iodized salt at the regional and local levels. They are local monitoring teams for iodized salt in support for food and drug regulatory officers and the local government unit sanitary inspectors. Even with the occurrence of the pandemic, the regional Bantay Asin task forces continue to implement and monitor salt ionization program activities while following minimum health protocols. First, strict monitoring of iodine level in salt using YWD iodine checker machines was implemented in salt plants, ports, point of sales, and other critical points. Second, the conduct of online meetings to discuss updates about the salt entry in the regions and issues and concerns experienced at checkpoints and other areas during salt testing. Revitalization meetings were also done in some regions to revisit the structure and functions of the regional Bantay Asin task force and ensure commitment from the members. Third, some regional Bantay Asin task forces also forge agreement and partnership with the Philippine National Police to ensure police power and safety of checkpoint officers. Fourth, coordination meetings were held to encourage LGUs to purchase their own WYD iodine checker machines and test salt sold in markets. Some regional Bantay Asin task forces partnered with DOST regional offices to provide free salt testing solutions to LGUs. The ILG regional office were also enjoined to help reactivate the local Bantay Asin task forces through the formulation of resolutions with regard to the Asin law and the National Salt Ionization Program. Fifth, the regional Bantay Asin task force members and personnel involved in salt testing were given an overview of iodine deficiency disorders, the Asin law, the NSIP, and the latest iodine status, and oriented on the use of the WYD iodine checker machines. Sixth, the regional Bantay Asin task forces also coordinated with local radio stations for the promotion of Saktong Iodine sa Asin or SISA-SIL. For wider reach, nutrition information dissemination and promotion were also done through distribution of flyers, social media postings, and purchase or distribution of advocacy shirts among local nutrition action officers and members of the regional Bantay Asin task forces. At this point, we will try to answer how the efforts in the implementation and monitoring of the salt ionization program at the national and subnational levels translate or contribute to achieving the health outcomes of women and children. Now let us look at the results of the National Nutrition Survey conducted by the OSDFRI, although this was clearly discussed by the previous speaker. Now, these surveys indicate a good picture for the general population since 2003 as mirrored by the situation among children 6 to 12 years old. Median UIC for this age group is at levels above the target of 100 micrograms per liter. Please note that the 6 to 12 years old group is used as a marker for the Philippine population, meaning that if the situation is good for this age group, then it is good for the other members of the general population. This applies to adults, but not to pregnant and lactating women. Now, non-pregnant and non-lactating women of reproductive age are also in optimal iodine status since 2013. In 2018, we reached the median UIC target for lactating women. It increased from 77 microgram per liter in 2013 to 103 micrograms per liter in 2018. While there is a good iodine status among the general population, the situation is opposite for the pregnant women. Though there is an increase of median UIC from 105 to 121 microgram per liter, we are still not able to reach the target of more than or equal to 150. There should be a 7.3 microgram per liter increase per year in order to reach the 150, more than 150 or equal to 150 target by 2022. Now, in terms of iodine deficiency disorders prevalence or percent of population with urinary iodine concentrate of less than 50 microgram per liter, we were able to achieve the target of less than 20% for children 6 to 12 years old and non-pregnant and non-lactating women of reproductive age. The prevalence of IDD or iodine deficiency disorders among lactating and pregnant women also decreased from 34.3% to 21.2% and 27 to 20.2% respectively. Now, if we target 2 points decrease per year, then we will reach 13.2% and 12.2% by end of 2022. While the continuous improvement in the iodine status of the general population is evident from the results of the surveys, let us not forget that pockets of iodine deficiency still exist among children 6 to 12 years old, which is 11.5%, and pregnant, which is 20.2%. Now, on this slide are the 13 provinces and highly urbanized cities with the highest prevalence of IDD based on the 2013 National Nutrition Survey. And 5 of these 13 areas were covered in the 2018 expanded National Nutrition Survey. And these are Capiz, Zamboanga del Norte, and Abra, which show significant decrease in iodine prevalence. However, the city of Isabela and Zamboanga del Norte were not able to meet the goal of less than 20%. Now, iodine status of the remaining provinces covered in the 2019 ENNS will be shared by the USDFNI through an online forum on May 27, 2021, which is 2 days from now. Now, let us look at the level of awareness and usage of iodized salt among households. These are the trends of awareness and usage of iodized salt from 1998 to 2013. The results of the survey in 2018 showed that majority of households were aware, which is 65.1%, and were users, meaning 61.6% of iodized salt. Now, the difference or the gap between the awareness and the usage of iodized salt continued to decrease from 1998 to 2018. While it is good news that more households are using iodized salt in the Philippines, now the decrease in awareness could indicate inadequate promotional efforts. Based on the results of the National Nutrition Surveys, the proportion of households using adequately iodized salt continued to increase from 25.2% in 2008 to 37.2% in 2018. Now, this data, however, show that there are still a lot to be done to achieve the ultimate goal of universal salt iodization of more than 90% of households using adequately iodized salt. Among those who are using adequately iodized salt, there was a significant lower iodine deficiency among the population groups such as school-age children, ages 6 to 12 years old, and then women of reproductive age, non-pregnant and lactating women, and among the elderly. Based on the survey results we have seen, we can say that we are doing a good job in the elimination of IDD in the country. There is continuous progress in the iodine status of the general population, and it is because all of our local government units, as well as the national government agencies, who have done tremendous work in supporting the activities under the salt iodization program. However, we cannot ignore the fact that iodine deficiency disorders still exist among children 6 to 12 years old, among pregnant and lactating mothers. So as not to waste the gains we had before the pandemic, the TWG National Salt Iodization Program, together with the regional and local Bantay Asin task forces and other stakeholders, must work together for a more effective and efficient implementation and monitoring of salt iodization program. There is a need also to ensure provision of necessary assistance to the salt industry for them to be able to comply with the ASIN law and supply adequately iodized salt. Now, to increase the demand for adequately iodized salt, we need to strengthen promotional and advocacy activities. Correct, the impactful messages in ASIN must be disseminated to bridge the gap between awareness and usage of adequately iodized salt and eventually achieve the universal salt iodization. Now let us all work hand in hand to combat iodine deficiency. Thank you very much and pleasant good afternoon, everyone. And I will end, before I end, I would just like to share with you the quote of Helen Keller. Alone we can do so little, but together we can do so much. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dayang Hirang. And it's now time to move on to a few things. And first is to acknowledge the presence within our midst of people from across the seas. And these are, I have recognized some of their names here from Sri Lanka, Dr. Damayanti Nanayakara from Sri Lanka. From Papua New Guinea, Sir Victor Temple, and many colleagues from Fiji who have tuned into this webinar of today. So we'd like to welcome them, and I hope we can interact with you in a bit more in the next few minutes. We have here some questions, and maybe this can be answered by our last speaker, who fortunately will be the only one who will be here with us to answer questions. And this is coming from Mr. Victor Temple. He is the national coordinator for IGN Papua New Guinea, and his question is, why are you using the 15 ppm cut-off point? And what is the cut-off point for iodine in the policy? So, Dr. Dayang Hirang. Dr. Dayang Hirang, you are muted. Did you get the question? Hello?
Yes.
Yeah,
Sorry, unmuted.
okay, so now the question is,
Yeah.
why are you using, or the Philippines, why is the Philippines using 15 ppm cut-off point? And what is the cut-off point for iodine in the policy?
Actually, the 15 ppm per household is the policy we have identified here in the Philippines per household. So that is the standing policy that we have here in the Philippines.
Is there a reason for the cutoff of 15? Why could it not be higher or lower? I think that's the question.
Actually, that is the minimum cutoff point that we have established as far as the policy guideline is concerned. But we can do higher, okay, actually. But it's here in the Philippines, we started with 15 ppm per household.
Okay.
All right.
There is a question here from Dr. Arnel Pauco, and to FNRI, aside from the salt used by the household, do we also measure iodine levels in other condiments used like soy sauce and fish sauce? I guess, Dr. Dayang Hirang, can you answer this in the absence of our FNRI colleague? Are there other condiments that are being monitored?
Actually, I do not hear of any studies regarding this one, but I'd like to whether ask na lang FNR regarding this one.
Yeah. Okay. To be fair, this question should be addressed to the Food and Nutrition Research Institute, but I think they have also made studies on this soy sauce and fish sauce, and especially among our small and medium scale industries, for the use of iodized salt in this, like in the Langgonisa or Tocino, or even in the manufacture of patis. And they have been very successful in implementing this. And it without, like for instance, as preservative, it did not in any way affect the quality of the food that is being preserved, like the daing and all of those preserved fish and everything like that. So, but I guess our FNRI can answer this more expertly. Another question is, I don't know whether can you please convert the healthy salt intake in teaspoon. For non-pregnant, non-lactating women, for the pregnant women, and for lactating women, will 1/4 teaspoon to 1/2 teaspoon be sufficient? This is a question, I guess, Dr. Dayang Hirang. The question is in measurements.
Yes. Actually, I have to call my staff in charge on this one. This is quite technical, but we will apprise the one who asked the question in the chat box, or can we get the email?
Yes, I think it's being recorded, and so it can be forwarded to you for more definitive answer. Another question is, okay, so please put on your questions in the chat box. I can read the chat box here. These are the two questions. The other messages are only in the names of our participants. But there are quite a few questions that have been put forward. Unfortunately, our first and second speakers could not be present. But this is, I think, what is important for you, Dr. Dayang Hirang, is the question is: do you think that the National Salt Iodization Program decreased the incidence or prevalence of iodine deficiency in the mother and child in our country? Do you think that the program, I think you have answered it, but maybe you can amplify it further?
Yeah. Thank you very much for that question. Actually, since the evolution of the National Salt Iodization Program in the Philippines, which NNC Secretariat is leading, it has shown reduction in the iodine deficiency disorders in the country. Now, as I've said in my presentation before I ended it, we still have much works to be done, and hopefully with this present administration, we can continue to have gainful effects of that National Salt Iodization Program with the implementation of its strategic plan of action. So thank you.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have much time. The time allotment for us is until 1:30 only, and we still have another official act to do, and this is in the at the juncture to present the certificates of appreciation to our speakers. And I would like to hand it over to Dr. Clark Cairo. Dr. Clark?
Yes, Doc, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll be awarding the certificates. The Department of Health awards the Certificate of Appreciation to Dr. Michael Zimmerman in grateful appreciation of his invaluable contribution as our distinguished resource speaker on the scourge of iodine deficiency on the woman and her child on May 25, 2021, during the week-long virtual observance of International Thyroid Awareness Week and World Thyroid Day from May 24 to 29, 2021. Signed by Dr. Maria Rosario Vergere, our Undersecretary of Health, Public Health Services Team, Department of Health. Thanks very much, Dr. Zimmerman. The same certificate is awarded to Director Imelda Agdepa in grateful appreciation. Yeah, it's already mentioned. So for her excellent talk on the National Nutrition Survey result on pregnant and lactating mother. Thanks very much, Director Agdepa. And lastly, the same certificate is awarded to Director Azucena Dayang Hirang for her superb talk on the National Salt Iodization Program. Has it made a difference in the health outcomes of women and children? Thanks very much, Director Dayang Hirang. Over to you, Dr. San Luis.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Cairo. We would like to ask all of the participants to join us in a photo session This is an important aspect of our seminar, that we are together in the elimination of IDD, especially among our women and child. So please turn on your videos so that you can be seen. Dolly, can you take over?
Yes, please. Again, kindly keep your cameras open. As seen on the gallery view, we have 10 slides. So first, I'll be taking the photo of the first one. 1, 2, 3. Keep your cameras open. I'm on the second slide. 1, 2, 3. Next one. 1, 2, 3. Smile. On the fourth one, keep your cameras open. 1, 2, 3. Keep your cameras open. I'm in the sixth slide. 7, 8, 9, and the last one. All covered, Dr. San Luis. Over to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dolly. She is the indefatigable workhorse of this webinar series. And now, to give you a glimpse of what is the third session tomorrow, is we have, as you can see in our program, we have now more clinically relevant topics on for our obstetricians, our pediatricians, and our neurologists will come in to discuss the problem of particularly on the mother and the child and fetal brain development. And for that, we have also invited Dr. Tim Korevaar, who will speak from the Netherlands by a pre-recorded pre-recorded presentation. So tune in tomorrow. And we hope that we will be able to celebrate this noontime matinee, you may say, a variety show. So we would like to invite everyone to take a survey, and please take note of to improve our learning session by completing this survey feedback through this scan of the QR code, and so that you will receive your certificate upon completion of the survey. Anything else, Dolly?
I think we're all done na po.
Okay, so we are on time, and we would like to express our appreciation again to our colleagues who presented, the 3 speakers, and to our participants, both local and international. And we hope that we will be able to get IDD eliminated once and for all in our countries. Thank you very much, and see you tomorrow.